Oh, here, I'll do it. Call to order. Monday, June 14th, 2021, meeting of the City of Ames Historic Preservation Commission. Welcome back, everybody. It's good to see everybody, new faces and old. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the agenda for today?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda for today?
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes from last time, from our hopefully last online meeting, May 10th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve those? Any corrections, any changes need to be done on that? Motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys. We're down to number 4 already, public forum. This time is set aside for public comments on topics of concern to the Historic Preservation Commission. Other than those on this agenda, the chairperson may limit each speaker to 5 minutes. Please understand that the commission is not likely to act on comments at this meeting due to the requirements of the open meetings law, but may do so at a future meeting. And our throngs of supporters are not here, so I think we can move beyond that. Number 5, continued discussion of award categories for the annual Historic Preservation Award Program.
I'll introduce this item. As you know, you discussed at length the award categories last time and felt like you needed more time. And so I put together a few, some extra resources for you that are extracted from several other programs as a reference. And these programs were selected because back in 2010, 2011, when the program was being revamped, these were communities that were reviewed for what they did. And I don't know why they were selected, but it seemed that since they were a template for what we currently have, they might be helpful to you in your discussion moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to you for your discussion and determination how you want to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Eloise. Jump in here, guys, if you would. I'm trying to remember exactly the nature of this discussion in the past, but we've had this discussion on several occasions, I think, in this meeting. And it was, I think we kind of came to the conclusion as a group that the categories, you know, the awards program is certainly worthwhile. That's not in question, but the categories are a wee bit complex. And I think we talked last time about perhaps reducing those or consolidating other certain categories into single categories. Does anybody have an opportunity to think about that, or do we have any input on those, on that discussion from last time?
I'll comment. This is very helpful. Thank you very much for this. Yes. Well, I went through it and made a few comments. I mean, there were some, I think under some other cities that just were probably a little bit more clear than I think it seems Ames in almost every instance was a more complicated description of, you know, it had more text in it. So I think I favor just going as close to the National Register definitions as possible for the most part. I think that that's just an excellent guide, and I think, you know, inventing something else is not necessary, but those would be my general comments.
So I think it makes sense to follow the national standards and guidelines. One thing I noticed is that the two most commonly used existing categories that the city uses, the historic rehabilitation and the restoration categories, we're talking about potentially eliminating one of those two or merging them.
Mm-hmm.
But those being the two most commonly used, are we potentially like eliminating the, you know, an avenue to recognize somebody? So I guess my question there is, would it be possible to give more than one award per category, or are we limiting just to one award?
actually, could you clarify that, Ray and Eloise? Is there any cap on the number of awards given in any category or?
No,
Or in
there's
ag-
no cap.
Okay. Yeah, I thought this, I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in.
No, I'm done. That answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, again, Eloise, this is very helpful, the number of awards per category, because I noticed that one of these, I think it was for historic preservation, 0 awardees since 2011. I mean, I guess to my mind, that's a category that is not being used that we probably don't need to use. I agree that we should always try to piggyback off of what the National Park Service does. Park Service doesn't really talk about adaptive reuse independently of rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is reusing a building and allowing for changes that weren't part of the original building. So to my mind, I think combining those two, even though those are the two highest numbers, I understand that could be problematic, but I think they're very similar. I did give this some thought, and I wanted to put something out on the table, if I may. I think, well, first of all, I look at the other cities that we have as comparables here, and I know that goes back to when this program was first put together 10 or so years ago, but San Antonio, Madison, Baltimore, obviously different cities. Baltimore is much bigger, Madison's much bigger, San Antonio is much bigger, also very high growth cities. And I think the problems that they're trying to address through these programs in those cities are different than what we have here in Ames. I mean, Ames is a very low growth, in terms of preservation, very uncontentious place. And I'm thinking that it might be better for us to just revisit the categories in general, and not use these other cities so much as models. And I'm just spitballing here, but I came up with 3 categories when I was giving this some thought prior to the meeting. Just to make things simple, category two bricks and mortar categories, one that's non-bricks and mortar. Number 1 would be historic rehabilitation, which collapses the adaptive reuse and the rehabilitation. So basically a property that is historic, that is given new use or continues to be used in the capacity for which it was built. But that follows the Secretary of the Interior standards, right? Those national standards that we like to adhere to. So that would be category 1. Category 2 would be rehab of a property that may not even be historic, but retains the property owner, the developer, attempts to do preservation work on it, even if it isn't in conformance with the Secretary of Interior standards. So again, I'll use the example of the Crawford School here in town, building not on the National Register. It's debatable whether it was ever eligible for the National Register. Probably isn't now because of the addition on the south side of that building, but the developer made a very good faith effort to retain the historic fabric, retain the integrity of the building while adding onto the building to make it functional in 2020 when it was completed. So that could be kind of category number 2, another bricks and mortar category, but kind of preservation light. And then the third category I thought might fold in historic preservation and one of the other ones that we have here, maybe the special categories. And I called it education planning, et cetera. So a project that isn't bricks and mortar, but represents a member of the public, developer, property owner, business owner, city government, major university that may or may not exist within our city boundaries. One of these entities doing the right thing, but not doing bricks and mortar work necessarily. That's kind of just, again, when I sat down and looked at all of these and looked at the numbers of awards given, and then gave some additional thought to why we're trying to give these awards out. It's not to necessarily it's always to send a message and celebrate the people that are doing the right thing. But unlike a Baltimore where there's massive demolition for lack of investment, or a San Antonio or Madison where there's a lot of demolition because of development, we don't have those problems here. So that's kind of my thinking. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I mean, I'm certainly not wed to it. It's just me throwing some ideas out there.
I think it works as far as simplifying it very much, so we won't go into these, okay, I want to nominate somebody, let's split hairs about exactly which category it needs to go into. This is a lot more straightforward, I think.
I have a problem with the second category, simply because if we're preserving historic resources, I think we need to follow the guidelines for preservation and not encourage doing a rehab that doesn't meet the standards and giving an award for that if it's an important building. And my suggestion would be, I've noticed several projects that are maybe have a historic environment and they are maybe to a non-contributing building, but then the result is compatibility to the historic district. And I think that's really important. I think that you could put that in a category of new compatible construction or new compatible rehab of a non-historic
Yeah.
building.
Actually, I had that in my notes. I had, for number 2, I had rehab of a property that might not be historic, but retains historic features, massing, aspects of integrity. This could also include a sensitive new build in one of the historic districts. So if we have a vacant lot in Old Town or in the downtown, or a building that is, demonstrably non-contributing, we could, see a property go in there that was actually more sensitive than what was there before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of that, I struggle with this too. I mean, we don't want to encourage bad projects. But I also think there's room, and as I look at the field, I see it kind of opening up in some respects. I mean, there are projects that, so like for instance, the city Crawford School, again, probably not eligible for the National Register, but an informal local landmark in the Campustown neighborhood. And I know the SCAN, the Campustown Neighborhood Association, worked very closely with the developer to try to retain the building instead of having it demolished and sold off for additional student housing. And so, and that actually that received an urban revitalization grant from the city, if I'm not mistaken. Crawford School, I think it did. So city was behind that. City liked the solution.
It was tax credits for rehabilitation district.
Not Crawford. No, it was an urban revitalization grant from the city. So
through the
yeah, no, because
program.
Yeah, it wasn't on. It isn't on. the
Yeah, I
national
think you're
register.
right.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, we can. I totally understand what you're saying as a preservationist. I know.
Well, but was it the school, since I
Crawford.
don't know anything about the background about the program and Ames at all. So if that was a designated building,
No, it wasn't though. It wasn't.
okay. See, I think that makes a difference, because if you don't bother to designate them, I think you have less
Oh yeah.
reason
Sure.
to, be picky, I guess.
Right.
But you could say that maybe the additions were compatible, though, couldn't you?
Yeah.
In
Well, yeah,
that case?
Yeah. And again, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear, but talking about properties that aren't on the National Register or local landmarks. So
Yeah,
these are properties that probably would not be either.
Okay.
I don't know if it's done in other cities. I know.
I've never heard of it, so, but I just think the compatibility is important because of, scale and character. And if that is done to a building that's not designated, then I think you could put it under the category of compatible rehabilitation or compatible new construction to an existing property or a new structure.
Right.
Compatible new structure. It's some kind of wording like that.
Yeah. In my wording is this, I'm just throwing it out there right now, but I'm sorry. Yeah.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
Are you, in your wording, are you referring somewhat to what's on page 3, the architecturally compatible new addition or structures? Or did you kind of wordsmith it different than that? You're maybe
Yeah, I mean, I
combine
guess-
different things.
Here's, my thinking is this. My thinking is we should be able to acknowledge work on a non-historic property where the owner nevertheless tries to do the right thing. I think we shouldn't limit ourselves. We should focus on historic, capital H, historic.
When you say
properties.
historic, do you want to define what you mean by?
Yeah, I define historic the way the Park Service does. So listed on or eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic
Okay.
Places, or in our case, a local landmark. But I'm just seeing, not just in Ames, but in cities around the country, properties that are not capital H historic. So they're not listed locally, they're not on the National Register. Yet property owners are still trying to do the right thing, right? They're not on the National Register, they're not eligible maybe, they're not getting tax credits for it, but they're maybe getting municipal urban revitalization grants to support their reuse. And while they may not follow the Secretary of Interior standards, they attempt to follow them loosely. And I'm just wondering if we can't call out some of those property owners. So I'm thinking maybe, this just occurred to me, but would it be okay if we asked the planning department to maybe find an example of a new build property in Old Town? Have we seen a lot of new build, new construction in Old Town?
You mean an entire house?
Yeah.
Only one.
And was it one that the city
It was
determined to be successful?
by Habitat for Humanity
Oh, right, I remember that one.
on
Yeah.
on Duff.
And that came before us a couple of years ago, that project, I think.
Yeah, it's been a few years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I think that Ames's, that wording is good, maybe just to expand it a little bit more descriptive then. Because that does kind of say what we're talking about, I think. And on page 3 under architecturally compatible new additions or structures. You see that one? It's the very first
Yeah.
one.
You know, I read that quickly. Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. One of the things that I think of is that sometimes people aren't ready, or the current property owners aren't ready to pursue historic preservation. Maybe they have a property that might be compatible or might be historic, but they're unwilling at this point to take on that aspect of nominating. But if they're willing to do the things that retain the fabric of the look, if they're doing the things that don't take away from it, things that could be reversed, or if they're doing things that they're trying to fit in, but they're not really willing. I guess part of it is I'm thinking that not everybody is ready to jump on the historic preservation bandwagon, and I'm not quite ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I want to retain as much fabric as we can, architectural possibilities. So I like the adaptive or the compatibility characteristic, and just acknowledge it's a compatibility, but maybe, it is a property that could ultimately become nominated, but maybe it's not there yet.
Yeah, that is actually on page 4 at the top. Keeping, under historic preservation, keeping a historic building when it survived without detrimental changes or deterioration, in good condition by performing the necessary maintenance and repair. I think I jotted down preservation maintenance award under that. I just thought that maybe described that a little better than historic preservation.
But it would be for a building that's already recognized though, right?
Well, no, not necessarily. I don't know how extensive the surveys have been here either, so it's hard for me to say. But I think if it was eligible, if there was one that maybe hadn't been surveyed and it came up as does the city, how do they review building permits for historic preservation? How do you do that?
You
here.
mean if it has been designated already, or
No,
you
when
mean?
somebody comes in with a building permit, like a contractor, how does someone flag that to know they may have to come to the commission? Do the
Any
planners?
property that is considered historic is supposed to have a historic zoning overlay.
Okay,
So then, and within chapter 31, there's certain, for the it only has to come to the Historic Preservation Commission if it's a local landmark.
yeah.
So
right.
downtown isn't, so that doesn't come before the commission.
Mhm.
But so if it's a local landmark as part of that establishment, there's criteria, design criteria, and then there's the overlay. So the zoning overlay to be historic would be the flag that they would know that it has to come to the.
Right, yeah, but the planners, when they review that, then there's.
Or even the inspectors.
Then, okay.
Anybody should know when they see that historic overlay that it has to have another review.
Okay. Thanks.
But if I'm following your logic, Ted, what you're saying is that one would be for historic, right? That's going to be like capital H. We would have one category, no matter what somebody does to it, that would fall under one. Second one could be non-historic, meaning anything that's not designated, it's not on the register, it's not a landmark. Again, any work that's done to those can fall under number 2. And then 3 is more like for people and organizations and
That was my thinking. I mean, we need to, I agree now that I look at it more closely, architecturally compatible new additions or structures. And we could kind of mess with that a little bit, the wording with that, to try to make it more expansive. But we'd have to define, it can't be a property built, last year. It has to be a property maybe built 50 years ago plus.
Things that are already identified in surveys, perhaps?
Or something that's been identified in the survey, but it hasn't been listed. Again, my goal was just to try to find a way to recognize the work of, and I know I'm fixating on one building, but a Crawford School, which we would never see as historic because it isn't listed and it's not locally designated. How can we pat those developers on the back for the work that they're doing? Because the impact on that neighborhood is immense. And even though it's not kind of the gold standard for preservation work, it's a fairly good approximation of what we're trying to achieve in preservation, and that's, livable communities.
I think that list of awardees that was with your packet last time, my opinion, and maybe you know better, Ray, but my opinion is most of the entries for awards are not listed on the National Historic Register.
Yeah.
The downtown is different because it is now on the National Historic Register, but it's not a local landmark. But, it seems like most of these projects are outside of
Outside of
our
the district.
historic district per se. I don't know.
Well, some are in the historic district, but,
Some in the
yeah,
old
some,
town.
but they can be anywhere in town. I mean, we've had, outside historic district probably as much as we've had inside.
Okay.
Looking ahead, I think there are areas, or there's certain structures and houses even that maybe in another 25 years would qualify that now don't fit into anything, and I just hate the fact that we get too fussy about a pristine and lock into a certain time frame. I think we need to have a little more of a breadth and looking forward of what are the things that we would like to encourage and see as a continuing fabric of what we've got.
I would agree with that. Is this something we want to, I think I asked this at our last meeting, but this is nothing that's imminent, right? We have time to think this over. Would you recommend taking more time? I mean, as a group, do we want to continue
Rich
to?
Smith, something out?
Yeah. I mean, if it's not something we need to have done by next meeting, can we continue to think about this? again, I mean, I think it's a wonderful program as it is. And if we just leave it as it is, I think it's still doing what these types of programs do. But again, when I look at this, and I think we're all kind of in agreement, it seems unnecessarily, complex. And if we can reduce the complexity, it might make it easier for people to apply for these things or make recommendations.
Would it maybe make sense for the next time for anybody who wants to wordsmith a category that they particularly want to see, put their own words together and we can compile it and send that out?
Yeah, it's a
It
good
sounds like maybe you've started to do that. And, whether you take some of this wording or parts of this or come up with a totally new wording, I think it would be helpful for everybody to have something in front of them to respond to.
Sure.
Does that sound?
That okay with you?
Yeah, I like that.
So that's your homework.
That is my homework. Never get away from homework. Okay. Any other comments on this? Or?
This was helpful.
Yeah, and again, thank you for, this is wonderful the way you put this together. This is very helpful. Number 6, continued discussion of the historic preservation work plan for 2021.
I wasn't here last night, but I read the minutes, what was discussed, and it sounded like you were talking some about surveys that had been done and possible grant opportunities. And so there's a stapled document there for each of you that's the historic property. It says it's chapter 4, historic property potentials. It's out of the historic preservation plan for Ames that Will Page put together, and gives some areas that he felt had potential to be designated as historic districts. And so that's just kind of a resource you can use as you're talking about these things. And then also the listing of the surveys that were also in the historic preservation plan, listed by Will Page, who was our consultant at the time to help us put that together. And then from last time, included again the memo about the work plan that was part of the Certified Local Government Annual Report for 2020, and then the revised goals, objectives, and action steps that was adopted by the City Council after the Commission had put that together. That was adopted by the Council in April. So try to provide some resources for you that you could use as you talk about where you want to go with your work plan this year. And I'm here to answer any questions you have, certainly, but it's just kind of a continuation of the discussion from the last meeting. And so I'll just let you go ahead and discuss that amongst yourselves.
Thank you, Ray. One of the things that we talked about in the last meeting was surveying. That you and I both were in agreement that, as a group, we were in agreement that that's a high priority, and that's what this represents. This is the Will Page documentation. I guess my first comment about this is I'm wondering if we should update. This is on the website, isn't it? Chapter 4 of the plan. Wondering if we
You
can.
download it.
I'm sorry.
I think it's downloadable from the
Yeah,
website.
yeah. Some of these things are.
We'd have to check to see if it's on the website.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is, but
It probably is.
I know some of the information in here is dated. I mean, Old Town,
Oh, yeah.
of course, is a National Register district.
Right.
And The downtown is a National Register
Yeah,
district.
this was done in 2009.
Yeah, and so several of these are already, they've been listed. The Ban Shell Park, I think, is on the National
Mhm.
Register. Adams House is a local landmark, right?
It is.
And then Martin House, I don't think is in here, but that's also a local
Yeah, it's
landmark.
Yes.
listed.
Oh, it is, okay. So, I'm wondering if maybe the first thing if we're all in agreement that this is a good starting point. I mean, this is work that's already been done and we should probably, extract as much value out of it as we can. But I think we should look at what the consultant identified, and certain potential districts in here I think we can remove. I know Campus Town, when Will surveyed this, was a very different campus town than it is today. And I think we'd either need to think about the boundaries that he drew or just remove it altogether. Is that something we can propose to get rid of all this? I mean, so there's no confusion on the part of the public about what's potentially eligible? Is that-
Yeah, when you say if that's something you can propose, you need to do another survey?
No, just to update the existing survey, so districts that are clearly no longer eligible, like Campus Town, could just be jettisoned if we came to that conclusion.
Too much change.
How do you update this is what I think.
Yeah.
Can they update it by removing something that doesn't seem to be appropriate or that has had action?
I think, yes, I think you can. I would suggest taking it to the city council so they, since it's part of the historic preservation plan that they adopted. But yeah, updating it, I can see where that'd be appropriate. And some of these things have already been addressed or may not need to be addressed any longer.
Yeah, I think Campus Town is probably the best example of that. I'm looking at the aerial here and I know that whole block is gone, I think down to.
Could you just put a shadow thing to say to delete that or something? Keep it in the report, but put something to indicate that that's not valid or something.
Like completed or
Or determined ineligible,
not
whatever.
applicable.
Whatever the situation is, if it's changed from this report, then just rather than redoing the whole report, maybe
Yeah.
just those things that have changed, finding a way to indicate that on the report.
Like an editing change, update as of X date,
Oh, yeah.
and then
Yeah.
say, these are
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
longer eligible due to demolitions or.
Right. Or
Mhm.
or would need to be revisited. I'm again looking at the Campus Town map. It'd be hard pressed to identify a district here anymore. I mean, it's just a little left. So these were all done by Will Page in 2007. Am I?
2009, well, it was adopted 2009,
Okay.
but yeah, he did the work before then.
So 10 years old.
Mhm.
And, some of these districts have changed, but probably others haven't so much. It seems to me that maybe one of the first things we want to do, if survey is a high priority, and we did talk about that last time, and talked about CLG grants to fund additional surveys. I'm thinking maybe it would be a good idea to try to identify one or two or three previously surveyed areas in here and have another look at them. Apply for a CLG grant to do a refresher survey. I mean, I don't know if there are any neighborhoods in town that the consultant would have avoided last time when he did this work 10, 12 years ago that we might want to do now. But when you guys look at what's included in here, don't any jump out at you as likely candidates for resurveys or?
South of campus, I think maybe, that has a lot of changes that happen. I think more so than many of the other residential
The
areas.
residential, I don't think as much.
Right, yeah.
I'd like to look at this more closely
Yeah.
and maybe to talk about that at the next meeting.
Um, Is there any way to help us in our decision-making? Is there any way to, I mean, if we, I know it's easy for us to drive around Ames and just look at what's there now, but I've been here 6 years and I know you recently,
Less than a year for me, so.
for those of us who don't know what Ames looked like back when these surveys were done, is there any way that you guys can, show us where demolitions are occurring in town, or to give us some way to understand where change is greatest in Ames? I mean, is that without making a huge burden for you guys? Would that be possible? I mean, are there neighborhoods in here? I suppose we should be asking ourselves, why are we doing survey, first off? I mean, are we doing survey? Is the first step to getting places listed on the National Register? Are we doing survey to make for better decision-making on the part of the city? Are we doing it with the hopes of promoting financial incentives after National Register? I think once we ask ourselves those questions, maybe we can, if we had additional data from you guys to know where the most threats to potentially historic neighborhoods are, that would maybe help us.
I mean, we would have a record of, for example, demolition permits.
Mhm.
Yeah, of any houses that have been demolished.
I mean, just from your experience, your working experience, are there parts of town where we're seeing that a lot?
I don't think there's been a lot
Yeah.
of demolitions. There's been some. Well, when you look back to when the historic preservation regulations were first adopted, there's probably been several demolitions, but since this report was done, there have been a few, not a huge number. But we could go back, however many years and give you a list of demolitions that have occurred and where they are.
Or maybe we could even flip that around. I mean, do you have a sense, are there neighborhoods in town where people, residents are either business owners or residential property owners are clamoring for designation of their neighborhood?
None at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make a difference if somebody really wanted to
Yeah.
Yeah,
have a
the-
designation.
The Martin House is probably the one that there's the most interest in right now. Lincoln Way,
Yeah.
just east of
Yes.
Kellogg. There's interest in preserving that.
Yeah.
And it's a local historic landmark.
Yeah.
It's not on the National Register.
Yeah, I think I told you guys a couple meetings ago, I thought it was on the National Register. It was part of a multiple property nomination, but it's not actually listed.
Yeah.
I was wrong about that, but it's, I think, probably eligible. Do you guys know the Martin House?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe demolitions would be, just to give us an idea about where there are threats to potentially historic buildings in town.
Sure.
Maybe zoning changes, I don't know. It's probably getting too far into the weeds, but.
And I have a question about CLG grants. I think that's a good way to get that done, this resurveying or surveying. And I understand the staff would not be able to put the time in to write the grant. Is that correct? Or has Ames applied for CLG grants before?
We have applied for CLG grants, but it's been a number of years since we have.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a 60-40 match
Yes.
now for CLG grants.
But, our commission meetings and the time you spend on preservation would count as a match. So
Right, yeah,
it would be an in-kind match, I think.
yeah, yeah. I
Probably
think there
not.
has to be so much cash, probably.
No,
Not
no,
anymore?
nope. I don't think so. Last time,
Okay,
it's been 11 years ago, but
okay.
that I did a CLG grant. But yeah, I would really like to look into that, and I can easily put something together too. But you get notification when the grants are during the grant cycle, or when the grant cycle begins, or
For the deadlines?
Mhm.
Yeah. The deadline for the CLG grant this year, for the draft application is August 14th. For the final application, it's September 3rd.
Okay, so that's not too far away.
So the city council on any financial contribution, they would have to make that decision. There's not been anything budgeted. So they would have to decide if they were going to take money from contingency funds or wherever they would take that from. But, nothing's been budgeted in the current budget. So it would take
It would take
action
council,
by the council to
right.
set aside some funds.
Would we be able to meet that deadline, or are we too far? I mean, looking at when the council meets, would we be able to get it to them for review, or not the grant, but get approval for funding from them, or time commitment from you guys?
I haven't even looked at that, so, if you were interested in pursuing a CLG grant, the sooner you could approach the council, the better. But yeah, of course, you'd need to identify what you want a grant for and where that would be and why, and, the council would want to know your reasoning for that and how this would benefit the city. And
Would this be something that a few of us could work on outside of this venue?
say that again?
Would we be able to work, at least some of us as a group, outside of this venue on coming up with a grant? Aren't we, open meeting laws, don't they require us to not meet over a certain number of people?
You couldn't have 4
Okay,
because that would be a quorum.
Mhm.
okay.
Okay.
Maybe 2 or 3 of us could get together.
Yeah, do you have the guidelines and everything and what their priorities are for funding? Did they send that to you?
Their guidelines for the CLG grants are right on the website of the State Historic Preservation
Okay.
Society.
Okay,
I could send you a link
okay,
for that.
that'd be great. You want that too?
Yeah, I think I have that. Send it to me too, please, if you would.
Ted, would it be worthwhile to have the representative from the Ames Historic folks? I'm looking at some of these, and some of these residential areas.
Can't hear you.
Okay,
Yeah, maybe bend the mic down a
been
little
a little closer there.
There you go.
Okay. Some of these residential neighborhoods, I'm looking through, and it's like I kind of want to go through here and kind of classify them as certain types of neighborhoods and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, have they had some thoughts about certain areas? Like some of them are low income, some of them are of certain other types of residential areas that they might have an interest or have something that might stick out that they could contribute to the evaluation.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Ames History Museum is a great resource. There's no reason we couldn't work with them on this, right? I think that's a wonderful idea. Yeah. Could we could involve them in the working group outside of the commission meetings if we got
Who is it that you're talking
the
about?
Ames History Museum?
Yeah, the Ames History Museum. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
There was a lot more of this than I realized. I'm thinking,
Ray, do you remember, was this an intensive survey or was it a recon survey? Oh, it was an intensive survey. So a lot of the data is already there.
right.
Well, which one was an intensive survey?
Well, I just opened it up, Chautauqua Park Edition.
Right.
Oh,
They all say
Um,
intensive survey, Greek Letters District.
And some of these.
there haven't been intensive, I mean, what he's recommending, I think, is that intensive surveys be done in these areas.
Oh, I see.
They haven't been done.
Okay, so this
So
is a
there's
recon survey.
No inventory forms for each individual property? You
No.
don't have an
Think so.
inventory?
No,
Okay.
there hasn't been a survey done.
Yeah.
needs to be
Now, for the ones that have been, for example, the Adams House, declared a local historic landmark, we would have an inventory form of that. But there's not been, a survey conducted on these other areas.
I think he did a recon survey. And so if I'm not mistaken, I've seen
Oh, in the fourth ward?
Yeah.
at least in the fourth ward.
In the fourth ward,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's not at the level that you're thinking. It's not an intensive level survey. I
And
think
it
he-
wouldn't include all these properties.
No,
No.
maybe not. No.
No. It would be west and south of campus.
Right. I think you're right about that.
It'd be nice if we could conclude neighborhood areas or at least some way of recognition, not just have, in spot properties of individual people or persons, things like that, something that's a little more
Right.
broader.
I agree. Are there other survey, I mean, I know we're all just kind of going over this for the
Yeah.
first time, or it's been a while for some of us. Are there other, surveys don't always have to be geographic. Surveys don't have to be, of contiguous properties on the ground. We can also do thematic surveys. And I'm just wondering if, I was thinking about this just minutes before the meeting, so if it's really dumb, forgive me. But I'm always interested in finding ways to, without suggesting that we landmark anything on the ISU campus, finding ways that we can integrate ISU into what we do here. And the one thing I was thinking is that, we have in my college, the College of Design, we have the state's only architecture program. And it's an old program, and it's a esteemed program, and it's produced a lot of very good architects. It's had a lot of very good architecture faculty involved in it. And just in casual conversations with my colleagues, but also my neighbors, I hear that there are quite a few houses that were designed by architecture faculty in Ames. And I'm just wondering if it might be a survey we could consider, a thematic survey, not a geographically contiguous survey, but a survey in potentially a district, a non-contiguous district, of properties developed or designed by these faculty over the last 40 or so years, 50 years. A lot of them are probably pushing 50 now. And I'm just wondering if there are other, topics like that we might explore in addition to the things that are identified in here, the neighborhoods identified in here.
The surveys are really important, but to get into something like that, if if we could do a historic context report for the whole city.
Yeah.
You'd be getting themes and architects, Iowa State, all of that would come under that. So if that's a possibility for CLG grant too, that would be a good,
I thought that was
Some
done.
of them.
Yeah, I thought that,
well, probably Historical Society has.
It wasn't like a landscape thing, I know at one time.
did Will Page ever do a context statement about Ames, where he looked at all the different historical threads and ethnic groups and populations and businesses that came, and that informed chapter 4, I think.
Yeah, and it also was used as a historic context for the Old Town National Register nomination.
So that is.
There's a name for that. I can't think of
Mhm.
what that's called right now. But it's a description of historic context that led to the development of Ames.
And is that on the website too? That would be part of that, of the preservation plan, I think, right?
Well, not necessarily. It's probably a separate document that was one of the things submitted with the Old Town National Register nomination. I can't think what that's called right now, but and I don't think we have that on the website.
I think it would be part of
Yeah.
the preservation plan. From what I remember, how they used to have, maybe it's changed, but there was a section on context
Yeah,
and themes that you could,
Mhm.
it might be worth
Okay.
to revisit
That's
that.
been done,
yeah, but it might be old. by now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't know to what extent that's changed, but could we, could you guys see if that's available? And if it's not on the web, could we have it on a Dropbox site or something? The context statements. And,
Yeah, I can look in that, yeah.
sorry, I don't mean to make more work for you guys, but
We appreciate it.
any other ideas about this? About survey? What was the other thing we wanted to talk about in terms of the work plan? I know a week ago, a month ago, we had talked about the possibility of bringing somebody from the SHPO or getting a local architect to talk to business owners in the newly nominated, newly listed downtown. Is that something we wanted to explore further? Can't remember where we left that.
The last time Eloise tried to get someone from the State Historic Preservation Office to talk about the tax credits, we couldn't get anyone at that time, but it might be different now.
Yeah,
So I just hit a block wall.
yeah,
They weren't responsive, and it became clear there was some reason that I didn't understand. But then it occurred to me after your last meeting, I think what would be really interesting is we've got people now who've received awards like AVAC
yeah.
who follow the National Historic. They got tax credits
Right.
and had to follow all the guidelines. And if you if you had some of these people who've been awarded, like Angie or whomever, who could walk people through or have tours of others that are interested too, then you've got your local resource. And then if there's a historic architect associated with the project or something, then maybe they could speak. So, we could invite SHPO, but if SHPO isn't interested, maybe we could create something that works, that does the same thing or even better.
Local mentors.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be-
I think Avec Design would be that's Jason, right?
Yeah, Dietzenbach.
I've in the course of my career, I've been in many of discussions of the tax credit program, and we've seen the slides, and they're good for what they are, but I think in terms of impact, presentations pale compared to actually walking through a building. Hopefully we can do that post-pandemic now, but walking through a building, pointing to challenges that the architect had to overcome to get the tax credits, to make that rehabilitation work. And if we could find, I know we're probably pretty limited in names, it might just be Jason, but if we could arrange for something like that over the summer, and maybe get somebody from SHPO, and I could reach out to them again if you wanted me to, who could come and talk about the current state of the tax credit program and talk about state tax credits and federal tax credits. I think that would be, and then if we could advertise it, that would be potentially very impactful, instead of just having a PowerPoint meeting somewhere. But I guess my opinion is that we focus on the new district just because it's new, and I think a lot of people don't realize that the downtown is now on the National Register. Is that a reasonable thing to try to get done before the cold weather comes back? Could we shoot for maybe September or something? Actually, if we could do September, then maybe students would be involved too.
And the weather be nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that doable or?
So you were going to reach out to SHPO, Ted?
Yeah, I can do that, certainly. I talk to them on a regular basis, and then, we need a local partner here to actually walk us through the building. Or we could take a building, if we had a property owner who hadn't done tax credits yet, but maybe was interested, we could get a historic architect to come out with somebody from the SHPO and walk through the building and talk about the challenges. If we can't go through one that's already been done.
I think you've got Sheldon Munns, that building that's always doing some things. And with AVAC, maybe there's several resources right there close. close to each other.
They don't have like a speakers bureau, do they, at the state?
You know, I,
You know
like
what I'm
local experts.
saying? Yeah.
I don't know if they do or not.
Okay.
Let me, if it's okay with the group, let me reach out to SHPO. And do you guys want me to reach out to somebody locally, or is that something that's best done through?
Maybe talk to Jason
Yeah,
at AVIC.
okay. Are you guys okay with me doing that, or?
Yeah.
Okay. In September, would that be, that would be
Mhm.
beastly hot, but still better than
Yeah.
Mhm.
cold. Okay, I'll reach out to both of them and we'll shoot for something in September maybe.
And are you mostly interested in the architectural, the physical aspects of the education, or the economic financials side of it?
Well, I think both are important.
You might want to reach out to IEDA because they're
Yeah.
the ones administering it, and they end up being the people you interface with a lot.
Right.
One other idea could be the little-known local property tax credit.
Yeah.
That could be an option. So maybe we could get from somebody from city assessor maybe to participate.
So that would be the urban revitalization, which is essentially the tax abatement, right? That 8-year, 12 years, 10 years stepped.
Yeah, 3, 5, and
Yeah.
And there's the design facade grant.
Yeah.
for downtown and Campus Town.
Oh, that would be good. That's plenty of
But
stuff.
those facade grants don't have to necessarily be, they get points for historic, but they
Right.
don't have to do historic.
But that's an
But it's
incentive.
something, right?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
an
it is
incentive.
something to help
Move it
properties
along.
to
Yeah.
keep up.
So does this need to go to the city council? I'm just trying to think. We've got to get our ducks in order, and would we need approval for them, or?
I think, what you're talking about with involving a local architect and the state, I don't think that needs to go to city council.
Even though we need the city to promote it. I mean, so I guess in my mind, this would be kind of an official city-sponsored event, open to the public. We need to advertise it somehow to get a public to attend. That's something we can kind of do without input from anyone else.
I think if you came back to the next meeting with the plan
Yeah,
and had a specific idea, date, people, approach, theme, or whatever, if you had something in place that can be voted on or
Something that's
amended
more
for your
real.
next meeting
yeah.
in July, then that would be achievable then
Okay.
to accomplish it in September. And then it could be promoted by the city, but it would need to, and we would talk with our director.
They're pretty well formed, it sounds like, but if we
Okay.
could say, yeah, we've got these people who are willing to go. We just need the approval.
Okay. We want to, maybe another informal working group? Anybody interested in that?
It would be.
I'm sorry, again, tell me your name again.
Angie.
Okay. Angie, anyone else?
I'd be willing to help, but you'll have to tell me what you want me to do.
Okay. I gotta figure out what I want to do first.
Sure.
So, it doesn't have to involve me.
Right, I can make phone calls or visit.
I don't want to exclude anybody else. Did either of you have your,
My plate's full.
I would help, but I think since I don't know what's gone on and I don't know anybody, so, but I would be happy to help.
so we'll do that. Ray, Eloise, we'll
Okay,
work together and come up with something for the next meeting.
that sounds good.
Are we forgetting anything from the preservation work plan?
Yeah, I brought up about reviewing the code.
Yeah.
And it's not on this work plan. This was submitted with the CLG report. This
Yes.
work plan, okay.
Yeah, the work plan was, yeah.
I had suggested it last time because in the bylaws, it says that the commission will review the ordinance every 5 years or something like that. And I understand it's been more than that, so. Is that something is it necessary to add it to the work plan, or can we just do it?
Well, we've got it in the, review sections of chapter 31, possible revisions.
Where is that?
It's in this, that was in your packet, the memo from last time, May 10th, 2021 HBC work plan discussion. And then on the second page is attachment A, the work plan. And there's some bold lettering for each different major work plan item. And one is
Oh, okay.
Complete
yeah,
review of
complete
chapter
review.
31.
Oh, I totally missed
Yep.
that. Sorry.
Anything else we need to? What were the, you guys remember what the outstanding things that we still wanted to talk about with respect to the work plan? Besides survey and,
I think survey, the
Survey.
code, education were the 3 points I recall.
okay. Are we forgetting anything? Seems like the code we will review, again, in due time, although not immediately. The education will kind of handle through the, getting somebody to talk about tax credits, do a walkthrough on the building, and then the survey we'll continue to work on between now and next month in anticipation of the CLG grant.
Right. I think that is.
I think it's a
It
great
should be a
idea.
priority, the grant for, if you want, I can get the information from staff and,
Yeah. If you would.
and look at it and see what we maybe could do.
Yeah.
And I'll have something at the next meeting then.
Thank you. Okay, so, commission comments, number 7. Comments, questions? I did have one question or one comment, or actually 2, I might bring that up. I did notice this is, I don't know if this is anything the city can do anything about, but I noticed at the corner of, do you know where so they're doing construction on the corner of Lincoln Way and I think Beach. Is that right by Iowa State Center?
Where the bus stop is.
Yeah, where the bus stop is. And I noticed that the Lincoln Highway marker is right there. And I know they're probably most of the way through construction, but every time I drive by that, I'm worried the next time I drive by it, I'm going to see it sheared off and laying in the gutter. And I'm just wondering if, I don't know, I imagine that's because it's a state trunk highway, right? It's not a City of Ames project. It's a IDOT project. Is there any way we can call attention to that? The Lincoln Highway marker, I mean, it's
Just to make sure they
that they don't.
save it.
Yeah, I mean, right now it has a piece of, last time I drove by anyway, it had a spool of police tape around it. So I don't know if that was to cordon off another area or to protect that, but it's just something to be aware of. I would
Sure,
hate to
no,
see that
that,
damage.
that's a good point.
No, oops.
Right, off to the landfill it goes. The other thing, we had a question too, Ray, about the Ames Tribune building. A couple of us heard that it was sold, or it's in the process of being sold.
It's sold.
It's sold?
Mhm.
Okay. What, do we know the fate of that building? I mean, is it going to be?
I think the Nelsons
Oh,
are.
yeah, it was in the paper.
Okay. Forget it,
Yes,
scratch
as a matter
it.
of fact,
Okay.
Chris Nelson redid that. He redid that building on Northwestern, right?
Oh, the old
Yeah,
gas
he said
station.
he caught the bug.
Yeah.
So they did buy it because it is a piece of history. And last time I had heard that they were exploring different options of what to do with it. But I think it'll be safe.
I think that was one of the buildings that was called out in one of the surveys that was done before the
Ooh, surprise.
Um,
Part of the downtown.
Was the district north of downtown, like the municipal center, civic center, Ames Civic Center. So that's, I don't know if that's something that falls on us or you guys, but I wonder if we can, it's Nelson that's doing it? He's no longer, he was a council person
He
here,
was.
but no longer.
Nope.
I mean, could we call his attention to the fact that that building is potentially historic, and if it were ever listed in the National Register, there might be financial incentives to rehabilitate
That's
it?
kind of why I brought it up, as maybe
Yeah.
somebody who would be interested in coming to the, if you do
Mhm.
some
Oh,
kind
an
of-
education.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that maybe it could be something, a place to visit,
Mhm.
as we, the
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's great.
I
Yeah.
think you can always approach somebody as an individual or as a person that that you have interest in historic preservation and have a discussion, but you can also approach them representing the commission if the commission wants somebody to, take that on and say the Historic Preservation Commission is. So either way, I think you can approach people.
I could do that. I used to work for him.
No.
I just want to remember you had said
Yeah,
at one
I
time.
used to work for him and our kids kind of grew up together, so.
Any other comments from the commission?
I'm curious to know what sessions that, I don't know how many people were able to go to the, or to participate in the
Preserve.
Preserve Symposium, yeah. And what you thought of
So,
it.
yeah, that's the same comment I wanted to make. So just to thank, Eloise and Ray for setting up that invitation there. I thought there were some really good sessions. I was able to tune into preservation of an old theater, cemetery, and then there was a wood preservation demonstration. And I think those recordings might still be available to folks. And I really enjoyed those three. Yeah.
I heard the attendance was slightly less than the Dubuque one, but still impressive given that it was online.
Yeah. Yeah, I did the cemetery one as well. I thought that was really interesting. One thing they did was the State Historic Preservation Plan. Did you happen to
I
look at
think I
that
was in
one?
on that one.
That was frustrating for me because they had a questionnaire
Yeah, it did get a little long. I
and
think
it was a lot of description and you had a very short time to complete it. And then they met in smaller groups and discussed the results of it. But the group I was in, I mean, it didn't make any sense. And I just was thinking that if that's what they're basing, if they're basing the comments from that survey
that
on
everybody
what
had
they're
10
going to
minutes to
do, I don't know, oh my gosh. It was just, I thought it was a fiasco, but most of the sessions were really good. They had did you happen to see the session on that group at Northern Iowa University that are collecting photographs of Iowans? Oh my gosh, it's amazing. They've got this digital program and it's a huge library. And the two people that presented had found out about this from someone in Hungary that is doing it, and it's not done no one else is doing it in the whole world, I guess, but it's called, gotta look it up. Yeah, and you might want to Google it because it's called Fortepan, Fortepan, Iowa. And they have this huge collection. It's buildings, it's people, it's everything. So
Is it a website or is it an app or?
it's the Ford, I think.
Is it one word, Fortepan?
Fortepan,
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Fortepan. .us is how you access the collection.
Yep. There it is. It's a website. Searchable.
These are historic photos and
Historic photos, and anybody can send them in.
I mean, it's not, I mean, this is probably from the 70s. So that, we're not talking about ancient pictures, but there are 9,000 images in it. So
Yeah, it was
So let's just have some
amazing.
fun.
what did the, was it University of Northern Iowa?
Mhm.
What was the project?
Well, I can't tell you.
I just searched Ames just at random. And so here's some old pictures on campus. This must be College Creek, probably. Old pictures of buildings.
Yeah,
So,
it's
yeah.
it's
And my
it's
guess
an
is that what, are
amazing
they-
resource.
Are users able to upload their own pictures, or do you have to go
You-
through them? I guess I can just.
I don't know how you
Okay.
want a copy of one? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying, like, let's say I have some pictures of my family in Indianola, and I wanted to throw them.
You just
in.
send them to them.
Oh,
And they put everything
them on
on,
there.
I guess.
That'd be kind of neat, because sometimes, when we're searching for images, we get the official images, but sometimes you want something that's a little more personal, or not
Mhm.
staged, or
Yeah,
okay.
anyway, that was.
those are the little gems that you pick up at the Preserve Island
Right.
thing that I just think are so fun.
I should say in defense of the survey plan, I know they're throwing the net as widely as they can. And they have an advisory group,
Mhm.
steering committee. I'm actually on that group. And
Okay,
And that's more professional people in
Right.
the field. But I think the goal was to try to involve the public as best they can. So,
Okay.
Paula Moore, who's been working on this, is asked that I share it with students and people up here in Ames, and I think they've done that pretty far and wide. But it won't just be that one. mural.
okay, good,
So,
good.
yeah.
Because I thought we were a pretty important group, and I thought, oh my gosh. It was just so quick, and it was on the screen, and
They wanted
And
you to
even-
rank them, I mean, exactly like from 1 to 10. And as you're going down the list, that's pretty important. And later on, you find, well, okay, maybe this is a little more, and it's to forever.
well, and some things were a rating 1 to 7, and there was one that was 1 to 14, and I mean, it was just the most confusing thing. Anyway, I'm glad you're on the committee.
well,
It's-
No, I think they're doing it the right way, but it's trying to get public input without getting, getting useful public input.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was just not a good thing to do by Zoom.
Yeah.
I think was the problem. I don't think that what the work that had been done and what they're trying to achieve is a problem. It was just that having it over
Yeah, you
Zoom
can
was a
imagine it.
problem.
Interesting. Any other comments, folks? Okay, staff comments?
Well, I was going to bring up the summit, but you already took care of that. So
And read your mind, Ray. We know what you're thinking.
anything from you? Eloise?
No, I don't have anything.
Thank you guys for all the materials, even not just today, but that you put together for us. And
Yeah, you're welcome.
especially during the pandemic, it was
Yeah.
helpful to have. I know both of you guys work together all three of you guys work together. And speaking on behalf of the entire commission, we really appreciate what you guys do for us.
You're welcome. Well,
Very much.
glad people, I'm glad you signed on, to Zoom, the whole new way of meeting and learning for all of us.
I'm happy to be back here, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, going to meetings in my pajamas was just.
Yeah,
Well, that's true.
There are
Okay.
advantages.
Throw a sweater on. Oh, yeah, I'm all
every time it didn't matter what time of day I was having a Zoom meeting or a WebEx meeting, the minute the meeting started, somebody would appear in my front yard or next door with a leaf blower.
Oh.
And I had to shut all the windows. Anything else, or? Number 9 is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, is this the thing that you were looking for?
Okay.